Hi guys, today's guest is a brilliant accordion player from England, and she's very famous for her innovative use of the Stradella bass and innovative playing in general. She's also famous for playing both Celtic and Scandinavian folk music, and she's toured all over the world. She's a really popular teacher, and she has taught in many music academies in Northern Europe. So, Karen Tweed, welcome to the studio.
It's great to be here, Rune.
Maybe we could start out with you just telling us a little bit about yourself and where you come from.
I'm from England. I was born in London, but I left when I was 3. So I don't really know where I'm from. My dad would say we're from the moon. That's what he used to say. So I suppose I'm from the moon. No, I'm English, and I played the accordion since the age of 11. That's it, really.
Yeah. And your mom's Irish, right?
My mum was from Ireland. Yeah, she was from Ballybunion, County Kerry, which is on the west coast, just north of Dingle. And she came to England when she was 15. So she'd spent her whole life there and never went back, actually. She died in England. And she loved Irish music. And, of course, she became like an expat. Like you have these communities But actually, we didn't get into an Irish community really, I think, until the family left London. So that was interesting.
Right.
So Irish music wasn't a big part of our household until I started playing the accordion at the age of 11. So that's interesting from other players' point of view, I suppose.
Did you go over to Ireland for holiday much? Or?
Not that often, because it was a working class family and there wasn't the money to go. We would. I don't remember going to Ireland before I was about. We must have done, but I don't remember my Irish trips until I was at least 11. And we went to London because that's where my other grandparents were. So it was cheaper to go to. We didn't have a car, so you had to go by train. So that was once a year. You saw your grandparents once a year.
Wow.
That's a different way of being. That's not much compared to what the story is today. You know, everybody has cars, everybody can get around. But very few people had cars at that time. So they went on public transport, and to take 4 children and 2 adults anywhere was expensive. So you only did it once a year.
Yeah.
But it was okay. That's what everybody did, and you didn't see it as anything wrong or a shame or anything. It was just, you look forward to it. It's great.
Yeah. And speaking about Ireland, one of my intentions with this podcast is to give people an insight in how you can get to know a tradition of a country that you didn't grow up in. And you are a master of Irish music.
Very kind.
Even though you were born and raised in England, as you just told us. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about how you got to know the Irish tradition so well, even though you didn't grow up in Ireland.
Well, the reason I started playing Irish music, really, first of all, my mother, there were Irish step dancing classes near us. So I went to step dancing classes. I must have gone to step dancing classes from about the age of 7. But I wasn't very good because I got distracted by, they played music on a cassette player, and I couldn't work out how anybody could play that fast. So I was always being told off for not concentrating on my feet because I was listening to the music. And of course, when you went to competitions, they had a piano player, actually, usually, not an accordion player or a violin player. Later, it was accordions, but mainly it was pianists who played the music. And so that was interesting. And I wasn't very good either. I like ceilidh dancing. I'm not good at step dancing. And I didn't want to be in the spotlight either. That wasn't really my thing. And then this guy called Joe Cole came to our town in Wellingborough, to our church hall. And my sister brought home her accordion, and she's 5 years older than me, and it was envy at first sight. I wanted her accordion.
Right.
So we shared an accordion for 6 months, and my dad said if I didn't get a good report after 6 months, that was the end of music lessons. So fantastic. We used to fight over the accordion and practice all the time. Great.
Nice.
And then from there, I had Joe Cole was an amazing teacher. My first teacher was on the melodica. That was when I was 7. So I was playing this melodica keyboard thing that you blow into, and strange teacher. He didn't want me to play the piano. He just wanted me to play the melodica. And he was a very nice man, a Welsh man called Ken Davis. But I'd already played that for 3 years, so I knew the keyboard, and I understood the dexterity and the breadth, the relationship between the breath and the keyboard. And then Joe Cole came to this town, and then I went to him for 2 years, and he said to my parents that he didn't want to let me go, but I needed a better teacher because I'd learned everything. I used to play in his little band, playing country and western music. It was great. I loved it. And so I was really into country and western music at an early age. And then we found out about Coulter's Couturier, and the closest was 30 miles away. And that's where I went. And that's changed my life because it was playing with young people the same age, having fun, and going to Cayley's and all, loving the music and the crack and all of that stuff. But you heard some really good players who were also expats, some great singers. But you didn't just hear the accordion, you heard fiddles and flutes, because people would play at these little events. They were like mini concerts, really.
Yeah, and maybe we should tell the listeners a little bit about what Coulter's is. It's this like Irish association.
Yeah, it's a global association that is based in Ireland, and it was made because apparently Irish music was becoming a low ebb in the 1950s. I think it was the 1950s. So they decided to do something about it and to try and revitalise Irish music. And you had the Pipers Club in Dublin. I think that goes back a lot before that, but it was like little clubs in towns all over Ireland that allowed. It was a cheap night out, and you played Irish music. You were able to go for lessons and learn dancing and singing and everything, and it was a real community-based thing. And from that, or maybe the first thing that started was a competition, because it was the same in Sweden, I think, when Swedish music was at a low ebb, they decided to have a big Swedish competition for the best fiddler, and people love competition, so it all started from there. Now it's a real global thing, and there are still lots of clubs, if you like, all over the world that encourage people to learn and play Irish music, and the big thing is the flower at the end of the year. So in England you'd have to go to a regional heat. You'd have to get in the first 3 places or 4 places, and then you go through to what they call the All Britain. So everybody who got through went to this one big competition. Then you had to get in the first 2, and then you went to the All Ireland, where you competed with the best of the Irish. Which is else.
All Ireland is kind of like the unofficial world championship.
Yeah, they don't call it World Championship. They call it the All Ireland, but it's the same thing. It's the same kind of thing.
Because people from all over the world.
Yeah, so I started going to that, but then. And then after this first teacher, I went to a couple of classical teachers. I didn't particularly enjoy the classical thing because at that time it's quite a solo thing, and you didn't have other friends of the same age. It's different now, I think. And but sadly, they either emigrated or died, so I just ran out of teachers. But looking back, I was very, very fortunate to have 4 or 5 teachers of different types of music. You don't realise what an impact that has on you. Anyway, then I got to play to be a student of John Whelan, and he has been the most inspirational for folk music that I've ever had, and I still use his teaching methodology. And he didn't play a piano accordion, he plays button accordion, and he didn't play bass, and he doesn't read music. So the lessons were quite slow and very detailed. So he was great. He was really great.
And if you were to give an advice to people out there who are maybe from, it could be Brazil or, I don't know, America, whatever, Denmark, that wants to learn to play Irish music, but they don't have a community of Irish musicians around them. What would you say to them? How do you get good at playing Irish music if there are no teachers or anything like that, sessions around in the area where you live?
Well, what I've found is, first of all, there's always somebody who plays Irish music somewhere. I've been so surprised in some little quiet corner of somewhere. There's always Irish musicians, but we're in a great age in that there are lots of different teaching Zoom lessons or workshops, whatever, that are posted up on YouTube and that are based in Ireland. I can't remember them offhand, but I'm sure we can find out some links for people at the end of this podcast. But there's lots of opportunities to learn just on your own, almost like distance learning. And there's also, I run Zoom workshops. Lots of people run Zoom workshops where you can go along. You don't have to play. You're just muted, but you just listen, and then you get the recording. You play back again and again and again. And then if you're really serious about it from any point in the world, even in like South America, there's loads of Irish music festivals in America that you could go to. You could save up and do one of those things if you really wanted to get into it. That's the thing. And it's about building up your community of Irish people you play to. But from a beginner's point of view, or from somebody who feels they've played other music and want to get into Irish music, I think it's about listening and concentrating on one person. Because my teacher, John, he emigrated to America when I was still very young because of various reasons. And I suddenly was left without him, and I was very afraid that what was I going to do at 15? I'd lost my teacher. And he said, this is a blessing, because if you keep coming to me, you're going to sound like me, and I'm already taken.
Yeah.
So now, at that time, I want you to put all of your LPs of accordion players in the loft. Don't listen to them. And concentrate on one player and copy them. And copy them. And I understood this because I was doing art at the time, and you copied the great masters to understand their techniques. So I chose a fiddle player, and I just copied that fiddle player and copied that fiddle player and copied that fiddle player, a guy called Des Hurley in Leeds. And I really understood, and the bellows is the bow, and all of that. And that's all about listening, actually, and watching and listening, watching and listening. And the way that people lift the bow a little bit, and obviously choose a musician you like. Don't choose someone you don't like. And then after him, I started playing with pipers. I got to know the Mehans in Dublin, and I loved learning about that. Then I got completely fixated on the playing of Noel Hill. There was a great album called Noel Hill and Tony Linnane. I learned every single track, like a duplicate, so you almost couldn't hear the difference between me and Noel Hill on the right hand. That's the precision I was aiming for. And then I went on to flutes. I just did it systematically. I was doing what my teacher told me to do. And he said to me, when you blend, not disappear, but when you blend in, then you're starting to learn Irish music. Yeah. And actually for him, Irish music wasn't about the accordion. The accordion is a very recent instrument. He said, actually, you need to go back to the voice. Don't learn slow airs from a fiddle player. Learn them from the songs.
Yeah.
Understand the stories, and that's what's already started. So music is stories without words. That's an interesting concept, and that's where that began, really.
Oh, very good. You've also played a lot of Swedish music, and you know the Swedish tradition very well. How did you learn the Swedish tradition?
Very dramatically. Yeah. Me and great guitar player Ian Carr, we were in the Catherine Tickell band, and it was the first time we'd been to Sweden, and we just happened to get to the Folketshus in Falun early, and there was a children's workshop, and these two fiddle players were finishing up the children's workshop, who were Ulla Bäckström and Karina Normanson, and Catherine asked them if they would play us a polska, because we'd been in Sweden for a week and we hadn't heard any traditional music at all. Nothing on the radio, couldn't find anything. And they played us a tune. And I remember Catherine was almost in tears. It was so beautiful. And me and Ian just looked at each other and went, we've got to learn this. To learn this. So I wrote a load of letters like I do. I'm a bit of a serial letter writer. And I wrote to Ulla, and we just decided we would do something. We didn't know what. But me and Ian wanted to learn Swedish music. So I can't remember if they came to us first or we went to them. But I do remember the first polska. It took them about 3 hours to teach. You just couldn't. Yeah. What is this music? The beat's in a different place, and the tonality's bonkers. And when you've listened to Celtic music, you couldn't get anything further afield than Swedish music.
Yeah,
and it was quite an easy polska they were teaching us, but it took us ages. So then I just fell in love with Swedish music, and then swap came about. But they were very generous, Ulla and Karina, in introducing us to all sorts of people like Bjorn Storby and Per Gudmundsson and Bengan Janssen and people like this. But I only listened to fiddle music. They kind of kept me away from the accordion music. But I didn't mind that because I was used to listening to other instruments. I love fiddles. I've never wanted to play a fiddle. I have tried. It's awful. It's terrible. But don't play fiddle. But I do love the sound of the fiddle because, and like every instrument, it depends on the player. It's completely individual. Some fiddle playing, it's not my cup of tea. But other fiddle playing, it's great. I remember me and Sharon Shannon one time, long time ago, before either of us were in bands, we had this discussion because she was very into Tommy Peoples and I was very into Kevin Burke, and we were discussing why, why did I prefer Kevin Burke and why did she prefer Tommy Peoples? But they're both brilliant. It's not that we don't like one or the other. It's just that I went more towards the Kevin Burke thing, maybe because of my Kerry background. My mother was from Kerry, and she was much more towards that gritty thing that she loved from Tommy, and she was And I remember she spent like 4 hours one time with a tape recorder to her ear, trying to work out how exactly he played a triplet. I mean, how exactly, what was the gap between the first note and the second note? This is the kind of detail. If you want to specialise, you do it if you were a glass maker, you do it if you were a wood maker. You would go to the absolute detail. I'm sure I'm on a spectrum, and it's part of being focused. But there's worse things you could be
Totally.
over the top about, I suppose.
You talked about playing the fiddle. I play the tin whistle as well, and that has given me a much better understanding of Irish music, but also Irish ornamentation. And I guess the tin whistle has been around in Irish music for much longer than the accordion has. And some of the ornamentation and all that was maybe actually kind of invented on the tin whistle and the pipes and the fiddle as well, I guess. I also played fiddle for 4 years when I was younger, and I do actually really like the fiddle. But it was too many instruments, because at some point I played 4 different instruments, and I figured out if I wanted to become decent at least a couple of the instruments, I would have to stick to maybe just 2 instruments. But anyway, playing fiddle and tin whistle gave me, as I said, a much better understanding of the tradition. And I've heard you earlier on talking about learning from players of other different instruments, and how that also has been an inspiration to you. Could you maybe tell a little bit about that? What did that give you?
I can't remember exactly when I realised it, but there was certainly a conversation with Ian Carr, probably in the back of the car, of the touring car, because we often used to swap. Cassettes of different. Catherine liked us making compilation cassettes. Everybody made compilation cassettes, and it was great in that band because everybody brought their favourite stuff. Now, what was interesting to me was the stuff that Ian was listening to. None of it was guitar music. I mean, none of it. It was all pop music. It was jazz. He loved Funkadelic. He loved Prince. He loved all of these people, and he got his inspiration from those. And it wasn't from other guitarists, and that's why he doesn't sound like your usual guitarist. He can do it, but what he really gets excited about is, because he's basically a frustrated drummer. He wants to be a drummer, so he wants to be everything. He wants to be percussion, he wants to be hi-hat, he wants to be bass drum, and that's why he gets all these mad rhythm things going, because that's what he hears in these great people like Prince and these bigger bands. He's trying to be that in one band, And I started to get to know more musicians, I suppose, because of touring and everything. And I would ask them, who did you learn from? And every single person, without fail, like really good musicians, would never say the same instrument. I'd ask a jazz musician, instrumentalist, who's your favourite? Oh, Ella Fitzgerald. And I'm like, oh, well, you're not a singer, but that's who they would listen to. Or they would cite, and maybe they would also listen to the trumpet or whatever, but their main person who was like, that's what they would say. And when I think about that, I don't have many accordion CDs. There's really only a few, because what I was listening to, because of my teacher, was fiddles. So then I got really fixated on fiddles or pipes. And then I met Seamus Meehan, and Seamus Meehan plays piano accordion, great piano accordion player, and really interesting, great piper, and of a very specific, complicated way of playing the pipes, So his ornamentation on the pipes, he can put onto the accordion because he understands.
Yes.
It's exactly. Just how do you transfer that? But what I'm doing, I'm always, and I think a lot of people are always making a compromise. I'm trying to kind of sound like that cran, but I just can't. There's just too many notes. I can't do it. Yeah. But I can kind of do it, and if I kind of iron out a few bits, maybe it'll work a bit. And I'm very, very apologetic about it. I can't do that stuff, but I can somehow blend in with other people to make it that sound. And it's more about the blending in, because you can get so far. I mean, it's fine to be really perfectionist about it, but for me, life's too short. I want to play music, so I don't understand about Swedish polska playing, really. I just happen to be in a band with 2 Swedish players, but I do understand about the phrasing. If I want to play with Ula and do his phrasing, I'm really detailed about how to follow it. And I might not even, there's one tune I still don't know where the first beat is, but I just watch him like a hawk, and as soon as he picks his bow up, I'm there. I know exactly when he's going to hit that note. So that's about just detailed listening, really. But all of them, they might, I can't say for everybody in the world, but I've been really surprised how many people would say that, like, an Irish musician would be really into a flute player, or a flute player would be really into it was a fiddle player that really got them. excited, but they were already playing. And then when they started to get quite good, what they were influenced by was always a different instrument. And I think there's a really big gap in teaching that we do an accordion course and we get accordionists. Well, I'd like to do an accordion course where, you do a bit with me, but actually your main bit is with a guitarist, or your main bit, and you have to do the work. You have to go, how do you do that on the guitar, and how can I do that? And let's have a look at that. Me and Tim Eady swapped classes a couple of times. That was really good fun, and people got a lot out of it because you're making them work. And I think we've made a rod for our back where we give them the notation and we tell them how to do it, and we give them all this precise stuff on the accordion, but they've lost the ability to use their ears and use their eyes and use their sense of whatever. They've lost essential sense, because if you make someone do it, they'll find their own way.
Yeah.
And then, of course, as soon as you start doing that with different instruments, if I'm listening to a trumpet player and then I'm listening to a pianist and then I'm listening to, I don't know, Freddie Mercury or something, I just take the best bits out of all of those. I'm a big Stevie Wonder fan. I don't think there's a day that goes by that I don't listen to Stevie Wonder. And it's because of his harmonica solos and it's his arrangements and how he makes things sound simple and they're not, and all of that. And I'm always nicking something. I'm nicking a bass line, or I'm nicking a little motif, or I'm nicking a little nuance. You really get into nuance, and you nick the things you really like, and it becomes your style, because you've got something from here, something from here, something from here, and that's what everybody has done. There's only 12 notes. Nothing is original.
Exactly. There are different ways of learning to play traditional music. For example, here in Denmark, the tradition is not as present all over the country as it is in, for example, Ireland. You told me that you didn't grow up surrounded by the tradition, the Irish tradition in that sense, and I didn't either. So I went to a music school, and there was a great teacher there, Bent Melvej, who taught me for many years, mostly Danish folk music, but also a bit of Irish and Scottish music, even though it wasn't his first thing, but he's an expert in Danish folk music, and he really opened my eyes to Irish music as well. But I didn't have any place I could go to sessions, or basically I didn't really have anyone that I could share the passion for Irish music with. And I think that way of growing up playing Irish music is very different to, for example, people who grow up in Ireland, who can go to sessions and they can go to FLAS and summer schools, and they just have access to Irish music all over the place all the time. Like a language, if you want to master a language, it's a lot easier if you're just surrounded by it all the time. You don't even think about it. So I've had to think a lot about how do you play Irish music, what's the phrasing like, what's the ornamentation and all these things. What was it like for you? How did you go about that?
Well, I had this teacher, John Whelan. That was the first thing that happened. And then he just told me what to listen to, because I had no control over him leaving. He had to go to, it was the next stage of his life. He had to emigrate to America. So I just did what he was telling me to do. Just really concentrate on one person at a time, learn all their stuff. But all my friends at that time, we were all there was much less recordings brought out. You might get, I don't know, 4 or 5 albums every 6 months or something. So not like 4 or 5 albums every day as it is now. So and everybody agreed, like the new Planksty album, and everybody really anticipated it. So you'd learn it, you just learn it, and then you would play those tunes with your friend because that was the latest album, and you'd have those, and so it went on like that, And also the first sessions I went to, I'd wait for 3 hours for them to play the Silver Spear. And then they played it, it was too fast and I couldn't play it anyway.
Because that was the tune you knew.
That was the tune I knew. But I didn't care. When you're a child, time is very different. You don't care because you're waiting. It's the anticipation as much as anything else. And then you're really happy they played your tune, And then for some reason I was very lucky that I met people, especially from the Liverpool Ceilidh Band, who saw something in me. And they would sit down, Eamon Coyne would sit down next to me and go, Karen, let's play that tune you've just learned. And you play it really slowly, and Peter McAlinden on the tin whistle, amazing tin whistle player. He had the patience of a saint. He knew I was getting into Finbar Dwyer and he loved Finbar Dwyer tunes. And actually he played a bit of accordion himself, but mainly tin whistle. And he would play tunes 80 times just to help me play them very slowly.
Yeah.
He had the patience of a saint. So I was very, very lucky in that way. But going back to what you said about growing up, it can be seen to be, I think it's a bit of a poison chalice to be surrounded, because it took me years to see outside of Irish music. You know, I was almost getting fascist about Irish music, that there wasn't another music. And in England, if you're in an expat situation, you don't listen to other folk music. Certainly my family didn't. It was Irish music or nothing, you know. So I didn't question that there was other music out there. I didn't know about English music until I was over 20. That's ridiculous. But there's also a part, because I didn't live in Luton, we had to travel a long way. At that time, 30 miles was quite a long way for my parents. Then I listened to the other stuff, because my brothers and sisters were much older than me. My sister was 5 years older, and then my brother was older and older and older. So I was listening to Pink Floyd and Joni Mitchell and the Mamas and the Papas, and while all my friends were listening to the more Dolly Osmond pop music of the time. And my mother, one of her favourite things, late at night on a Saturday night, was Oscar Peterson. He had a show called Oscar Peterson Presents, and if I was good, I was allowed to stay up and watch it. I didn't know what this stuff was. I saw this big black guy having a great fun with banana fingers, doing ridiculous things on the piano. I didn't understand it. I just thought it was amazing. But I had that, what a fantastic thing to grow up with. If I had been born in Ireland, I'm not saying I wouldn't have listened to Oscar Peterson, but I might have listened to much more Irish music, and that makes it more like this. And that, I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but it's made me the musician I am, because I've always listened to other music, like we were saying about Stevie Wonder or Santana or XTC or whoever, or ABBA. You know, that was a huge thing in England, and it still is, you know. So we're all, like Simon Jeffrey says, we're always listening to something, whether we know it or not. And I can't believe that doesn't go in somewhere. It's how open you are to it. And the older I get, the more I'm going, it's just like Christmas. There's so much music out there. And I can't be brilliant at everything, but I can have fun.
Yeah.
And I'm pleased that I specialised in Irish music for a long time, because that was a technical skill on the right hand. But I had to find my way with the left hand, because no one played left hand in Irish music, apart from probably Frank Kelly, Alan Kelly's dad, and possibly Kevin Taylor. And Vince Jordan, but nobody. That was three piano accordion players in the whole of Irish music who played bass. Because it's not, and even when you adjudicate, they give 5 marks out of 100 to the bass. It's like, you wouldn't play the harp one-handed, you wouldn't play the piano one-handed. So that's what I started to question. Why are people just flapping around on the bass? Why don't they play that bass? It's got so much richness, so much harmony.
And that's a thing that you're really famous for. It's your use of Stradella bass in folk music.
That's Ian Carr's fault.
That's Ian Carr's fault, because that was actually my next question. How did you invent that style that you've become so famous for?
Well, when I was in the Catherine Tickell band, I started to get a little bit frustrated by its limitations, and Andy Cutting had come back from Happavesi, I think it was, and he said, "Listen to this woman," and it was Maria Kalanimi, right? And then I found out she played this thing called a free bass accordion. So I was thinking of buying a free bass. Well, I couldn't afford it at the time. They're really expensive instruments. And then Ian Carr said to me, "Karen, don't get a free bass, because if you buy a free bass, you'll sound like every other free bass person. Why don't you try doing on the Stradella what you play on the free bass?" Now, Ian could say that because his first instrument was piano accordion. And he stopped playing piano accordion because it wasn't sexy, but guitar was sexy. That's why he ended up playing the guitar. But he knew what he was talking about because he understood the bass, you know. And I went, and he said, "And you'll save loads of money." So it's like, it was a really good idea. And I started doing that. And Andy was already playing what we now know as minor sevenths. He doesn't know they're called minor sevenths. He just knows he's only got 12 bass notes, so he's got to kind of mix and match. And I was like, "What did you just do? I don't do that. I've got 72 basses and you do that, you know." So he just showed me it was a E with a C major chord. And that's an E minor seventh, which is just slightly sweeter than an E minor. So I just played around till I found it on my basses. And my whole style, as you know, is just based on one thing, which is minor sevenths. I love them. I think they're great. And from there, you start finding out about sus chords and how to do it. And then I met Karen Street, who's a jazz box player, and she started showing me different. And Ian Lothian, amazing, amazing guy who plays fantastic folk, fantastic classical, fantastic heavy rock on the accordion, and fantastic, jazz chords and things. And they just said, "Oh yeah, Karen, it's like this, it's like this." And it's just people show you. But nobody in Irish music could show me that because they don't play it.
But I do agree that, you know, one of your what you call it, traits is the minor 7 chord, but it's also the rhythmical way you play the chords, because you don't play a lot of umpa.
No.
The traditional accordion way of using your bass, but you have a much more syncopated style and all that. Where did that come from? Because that's also very interesting, I think, and something that's been very inspiring for me as well, because you used to be my teacher when I lived in Limerick.
Just one or two
Well,
lessons.
a couple of lessons, but it meant a lot to me, really a lot.
That's very kind, yeah. Well, what happened there was I was going to these amazing sessions when I went to art college. I didn't go to music college because at that time the piano accordion wasn't seen as a serious instrument, right? So I didn't worry about that because I liked art anyway. So I went to art college. It was in Leeds. Leeds is a huge Irish music area. I mean, I spent more nights playing Irish music than I did anything else at that time. It was fantastic. And then this session started in Birmingham, which was a whole weekend. It went on all night, all day. And it was kind of, the main people who did it were Joe Malloy and his family, Enda Malloy, and Kevin Crawford, and a fantastic guitarist they knew from Paris called Ivan Miletic, who's still playing and isn't a professional guitarist but easily could be. And I sat next to Ivan with my ear, and he would say to me, Karen, try this, Karen. And he was into Andy Irvine, and he was, he could do anything, bouzouki or guitar. And I started to listen to the rhythm of it. And what occurred to me at the time was when you do this umpa thing, you actually cut up the music. Like, there's two things. A, I'm lazy. I'm looking for ease all the time. That's absolutely no apologies about that. But there's this thing where if you do that, it's really tiring. You can't play a 12-hour session going umpa, umpa, umpa. Plus, it cuts up the music. And that's why I think the accordion is not enjoyed by a lot of people in sessions, because the bass is too loud and it's going umpa, umpa, umpa. When the music's going dum, da, 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 dum, you don't want umpa, umpa, umpa in that. And it's that whole thing. I used to describe it in Britain when you take your driving lessons. The one thing you mustn't do is interrupt the flow of traffic.
Yeah.
That's the phrase, right? You mustn't interrupt the flow of traffic. So I heard the melody, that's the traffic, and you mustn't interrupt that flow. You've got to go with the flow. So this umpa thing, and the only reason they do it is because they don't question it. It's the same in Irish music. For a long time it was piano, umpa, umpa, which is fine for dance music and Cayley band music. Doesn't really do it for me. And then there was that amazing album, Joylon Jackson and Paddy Glackin, which was bonkers. And Joylon Jackson did all this synthesized stuff, which made me go, ooh, you can do this, It was really amazing. So I started to think about, what about looking at what guitarists do? And they don't do that all the time, or they might do longer chords, or what about having it as a carpet underneath something? And I started experimenting with how it would go with, I was thinking, if you've got a melody, how can you support it? How can you not interrupt it? How can you support it? It came from there, really. And then, of course, Ian Carr, he was all into that totally. And we would listen to a lot of singer-songwriters, but not just the singer-songwriters, but how they use their players and how their expertise was amazing by what they didn't do rather than what they did do. We had hours of conversations in the Catherine Tickell car, and Catherine was really good at this as well. She was listening to a lot of Indian music at the time. If you listen to Indian music, that's very peaceful.
And I guess that goes to show that it's great to dive into a particular certain tradition, but it's also very good to keep your eyes open to other genres and styles of music, because you can really get inspired from that, and then maybe bring some of that into, let's say, Irish or Danish music or whatever it might be.
Yeah, and you can do that, but you've got to be very respectful, because otherwise it feels like a boulder going down on a piece of music. You've got to remember that music has been there for ancient, years and years and years, eons, really. So you've got to allow that music to shine. And it still goes back to storytelling. If you're telling a story, and because some storytellers do use music, and songwriting is storytelling. So if the singer doesn't pronounce the words, you don't hear the story. If everybody's getting in the way with the music, you can't get in the way of the story. And for me, the story is the melody line.
Yeah.
So the melody, and it can be lost if it's in a big arrangement, but when we're playing, for me, when I'm playing tunes, if that tune gets lost because it's been cut up all the time or whatever, something has to, it's like the icing on the cake but underneath. Yeah. That's what it is. Yeah. It has to support it, and also in telling that story in just a jig, I'm always thinking, what's that bit in the jig that makes me go, oh? And I had this old friend called Tom Connerboy, who lots of people knew in Irish music. He went to the Birmingham sessions. He was an old guy, and he was from Ireland, but he lived in England all his life. And he often used to give me a lift because he lived near where I lived. And he would always talk about that one note, that one bar. You know, he'd go, Karen, where Mick Keneally goes, dika dika da, dika dika da, boop ba doo. It's like, and he got the nuance. He taught me nuance. An old guy who couldn't read music, wasn't the greatest player, but oh my God, he so got the nuance. And he got very excited about the minor tunes, and we were always talking about Conor Tully and Paddy Fahey and all of those people, and he could really lilt and diddle very well. So all the way home driving to Northamptonshire, I'd have this great guy just singing these tunes to me and going, yeah, but it's that particular note and that particular note. He got it, and that man could hardly write, you know. But and that's what it is. It's about nuance at the end of the day.
Totally. I would say that you're famous for your inventive playing in general, not just the left hand. What's your take on that?
I think it's a very interesting and very kind thing to say. When you're in the middle of doing this stuff, you don't think you're being different or modern or whatever. You're exploring. And you know when you're going too far, because I think I have some really good people in Irish music. I would always go to people that I've played with for years. Like there's some great people in Roscommon who I know, and Longford, and I might ask them, or I might not. I might just say, I'm trying this and it's fun. It's about fun. And I always I think I'm trying to find the deeper story for me. And but it's not a conscious thing of, today I'm going to do this with this Polska kind of thing. But anything that helps me explore the music is really important. There's a great accordion player in England called John Kirkpatrick, and he plays a really interesting diatonic style with a Stradella bass, right, which is the I think it's called the San Marino, which Jimmy Shand invented. So you could be fully chromatic in your harmony, but still play the push-pull here, but it's not push-pull on the left hand. And he plays a lot of dance music, a lot of Morris music, and in that tradition, you play one tune 12 times. Now, they do that also in contradance music, and you really get to know the tune, and you really get to so once or twice isn't enough to start to hear the beauty in that tune, right? And so I started thinking about that, because at that time I was like twice and change. I started thinking about, that's actually really interesting. And also because, if you play a G chord, there's zillions of things you can play instead of a G chord. We just play a G chord because we've always played a G chord. Mm. But and David Milligan and Timo Alakatila show me just how much you can change that. But they're very, and David is very jazz, but he plays a lot of Scottish folk music. And Timo, of course, plays everything. But they both love and respect that tradition. So they try to do the things, they try to colour it. That's what it's about, colouring in. So I've always coloured in. I do artwork, and I love artwork, and I did that before I did anything. And the big thing at Christmas, you got a colouring in book and you coloured it in, right? So I think in terms of colouring things in and space. So John Whelan used to talk about the space between the notes, which is negative space. And I got that because you do that in art all the time. You can't draw a plant unless you're a botanist. You can't draw a plant without doing the negative space, what's behind it, because it shows you if it's in the right size and everything, and it shows it that it actually exists in a three-dimensional space, okay? So how do I do that in music to make it in a three-dimensional space? So it's colouring it. And so I think in terms of the colour, and the colour might be dramatic like tango, or and tango is very fiery and colourful if you think of the dancers. And in Ireland, there's a great melancholic thing. And I often think of those as, I've never thought about this before, but I suppose I do think of them in kind of more terms of blues and greens, and but not just blues and greens. They kind of expand each way. There's a velvety scrumminess about it. That's what I'm trying to put over in a Storm McCree or something. Right. And that's also about leaving space in the music, because also if you have a silence before an E minor seventh chord, it's like.
Yeah, I think there's actually a version of a Storm McCree on YouTube.
Yeah,
you're playing it up on Orkney.
On Orkney, yes, Simon Toomey did that. Yeah, that's right.
Where you can really hear that you have like more modern way of using the left hand and stuff like that.
I'm trying to put across the emotion that music does for me.
Yeah.
I've got this lolly, and I want you to go have a lick of my lolly. It's lovely. That's all it's about. And I'm going, Storm Creek is such. I mean, there's 7 notes in that tune. I don't know how many, but there's very few notes in that tune. But it's like ridiculous. It's so beautiful.
Yeah.
But if you hear a singer sing it, they don't go, oh, Storm McCree, da-da-da-da-da. You know, they sing it slowly, and the words are very important, even if they're in Gaelic and you don't understand them. You get by the tone and the texture that singer's putting into that tune that there's something very heartfelt about this. How do I do that on an accordion? I find that fascinating.
Yeah, totally.
So I'm trying to do it all the time.
And I would recommend the listeners to go and check out your version. It's beautiful. Really, really good.
But less is more.
Yeah.
Less is more. And all the great jazzers, less is more.
Yeah.
Every single time. And it's how you inflect on a note. That's what I've found from like the great players. They're little, like Jackie Daly. I don't know about now, but he used to hardly use any ornamentation. But he just spend a little bit more time on one note, and you go, oh, I love that note.
Yeah,
I love that note.
It's in the subtleties and all that.
Subtleties.
What is a good teacher for you? Because I know that you teach a lot.
Kind.
Kind.
That's it.
Yeah. Great.
If you're not kind to your students, we've all had teachers who are kind and who are not kind. There's only 2 categories.
Yeah.
And the not kind don't listen. And you have to listen to your students. Your job as a teacher is to find a way to get them to understand.
Yeah.
And if they don't understand, you find another way. And if they don't understand that, you find another way. And it's a fascinating process, and I love it. And I would never dictate what somebody has to learn. I would suggest if what they want to learn, they tell me what they want to learn, what they would love to be able to play, and then we work backwards on how to get to that place.
Yeah.
But it's kind.
Great. And you've taught a lot of young people. I know that these days you mostly teach older people or, mature students, let's say. But you've also taught a lot of kids and young people. And I guess we've both met a lot of kids and young people who want to become professional musicians. Would you say that being a professional musician, is that for everyone who's good at playing their instrument, or does it take a lot more than that?
I think that's 2 questions. So first of all, it's not for everyone. It's possibly going to upset people here now, but I would say my experience is that the touring profession, the music industry, is one of the most toxic because it's complete competition. So if you're ambitious and you like competition, you'll do very well. If you are a bit shyer, it will take longer, and there are many disappointments. And also, you have to remember that the industry is not run by musicians. It's not even run by creatives, I would say, mostly. It's run by people who want to make money and who want to promote something. So as long as you remember that, you take on the industry. So if you don't like working a lot on admin, waiting a lot on trains and buses and having to rush your tea and being in 7 different places at once and all that, it can be great. It can be really fantastic, but it generally doesn't get easier. And you still have that when you're older, and if you don't want that, then that isn't the industry for you.
Yeah. And what skills or which skills do you think are important for a professional musician, or what do you have to kind of either be born with or maybe acquire along the way?
Yeah, first of all, I wouldn't call myself a successful professional musician because because again it's what do you term by successful? Somebody who inspires people doesn't necessarily make a lot of money out of their.
That's true.
So what is success for some people? It's about being famous and it's about having lots of money, And I'm well known, but I'm a big fish in a very small fishbowl, I would say. And if you look at the world of accordions, which I've never really gone into very much, I play folk music rather than accordion music. And but from that point of view, it'd be interesting. Bruce Molsky, here you go. So Bruce Molsky, who I think is one of the most inspiring musicians I've ever met and singers, and he produced my solo album. And he said to me on the eve of the album, "I've got a question for you. Do you want this album to be really successful and make a lot of money, or do you want this album to be the best album you've made up until today? He said, he said, I won't judge you if you want one or the other, but it means my job as a producer is very different. So he's talking about the industry, and I said I wanted it to be the best music I'd have ever played, and that album has probably sold less than 1,000 copies. There's no money to be made out of that album, but because I wanted it to be really what I wanted it to be. But having said that, you can make good money in music, and I love playing for dances and weddings and things like that, and that's another way. You just have to be very multi-directional in your music, Yeah. But I'd also say to people who want to play music is to always be joyful. If it doesn't bring you joy, drop it. Because there's a lot of mental health problems in music because of that. And don't compromise thinking it's going to get you further. So if you give away your music to Spotify or whatever, right, that does not guarantee that you're going to get loads of people following you. It really doesn't.
No.
And a good friend of mine who was very high up in IT and social media, and he told me the statistics still say that what sells albums is word of mouth, not social media. It's very easy to say and all this. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean people come to your gigs, What actually means is if people actually go there and if people actually buy your music. So it takes longer if you want to be true to yourself.
Yeah.
Don't sell your soul to the devil. Don't sell your don't ever sell your publishing. I've kept all my publishing and I haven't made much money, but at least I own the stuff that I own. I own my solo album and stuff like that. And the biggest lesson on that is that Paul McCartney couldn't afford to buy back his own songs because Michael Jackson had more money.
Yeah,
that's nuts.
Crazy.
That's nuts. So, play music, be professional. But listen, the clue is in the word professional. I didn't get this for years. Be professional. Have your boundaries. Know how much you want. Don't complain about it if you get less and you've already agreed to having less. Be professional. Know what you want to do. But have fun. Really have fun. And if it's not fun, keep it as a hobby.
Yeah.
Otherwise, be an accountant. Make loads of money as an accountant or a doctor and enjoy your music. That's what I would say for my life again. Although, I would do the same again, I suppose, We don't know. I don't have any regrets. I've been very fortunate and amazed at people who want to work with me. I'm just confident to say, do you fancy us doing something? And then I think they're going to say no, and they go, yeah, why not?
Yeah.
So it's be brave. Be brave.
Yeah.
Listen a lot. Listen to everything. Have fun. Yeah.
Great. Well, I guess you already answered my next question, which was if you had any specific advice for young people who want to make music their living.
Yeah. Well, what I would say to that is I had a fantastic teacher at school she was an English teacher, and she always said to us, aim for the moon, and if you've reached the stars, you've done well.
Yeah.
So aim high. Aim high. I'm still trying to be on a level with Stevie Wonder. I'll probably never get there, but I'm really happy in trying. And I still get some fantastic. And sometimes people say, Karen, that was a great arrangement. I'm going, yeah, of course it was, because it's all Stevie Wonder. But if I do a Stevie Wonder bass line and change it a little bit over a reel, you don't hear that it's Stevie Wonder, but you think, that rocks. Well, of course it would, because I've nicked it from Stevie Wonder.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't it be?
That's great.
So I've got one more thing to say on a positive note about being a professional musician. When you're a professional musician, you theoretically get paid to research music and listen to music, and it makes you very open to music. And at festivals, it's great because you get to hear other people at festivals. But I couldn't say more importantly, go and see and listen to and hear other music as much as possible. And you can learn as much from music you don't like as you can, and also for performance skills. Go and see YouTube, go and see a concert. You can really take stuff from people and the way they dress, the way they are. What do you like about your favourite people? I'm a huge fan of Robert Smith and The Cure, and their latest album is just amazing. And David Byrne, the latest stuff he's doing is just ridiculous. And Brian Eno, composer Judith Weir, these people in all different walks of life, you could go and see your favourite string quartet, or go and see a string quartet if you've never seen a string quartet, and see what that's like in a concert. It's so different from a folk music concert, but you will learn the things that your body loves, and then you want to find out why does it love that. It might be a chord, it might be an arrangement, it might be the way somebody just, their body movements. Sturla Erde from Norway talks a lot about embodying. We can learn tunes and we can learn notation, but until we embody, he talks a lot about the Hardanger fiddle. So they're teaching kids to play Hardanger fiddle. This is like amazing, because that nearly died at some point. And they've now got money to get really good Hardanger fiddles to young people in Trondheim. But you get to a stage where the jump from being playing a little bit and being good, and that amazing intricate ornamentation, how do you do that? And it's about embodying it, and you can only embody it if you suck in every sensual experience you can, and that's going to concerts, that's listening and listening and listening and watching and watching and watching and talking about it to people and saying, Rune, what have you been listening to today? And not just Irish music, what's your favourite songwriter or whoever? And you really, really get a lot of, that's your groundwork, that's your research. And you might not use it now, but I'm going back to stuff that I used to listen to when I was 18, and I'm going, that's still like the Moving Hearts album we were talking about, the Moving Hearts. I remember seeing them, and I listened to their version of Lark in the Morning, one of the best tunes ever written, so easy. And they play it for like 10 minutes. It's unbelievable. Yeah. I can learn from that still. And that was made in 1988 or something. I don't know, whenever.
The year I was born.
There you go.
Your music is, in my opinion, very, very soulful and also very playful. Is that a style of playing that just kind of developed over time without you thinking about it, or have you been very conscious about how you play, how you phrase and how you think about music in general? Because my experience is that some people are, now I have to be careful with my words here, but some people are just born quite musical. Of course you have to develop your musicality and all that, but some people just seem to be musical from birth, basically, and other people have a more, let's say, academic approach to it, or they think a lot about how they play and how they phrase and these things. And I'm not saying one thing is better than the other, but what is your approach to?
My approach is I'm a big fan, not all the time, but every so often. I love autobiographies and biographies. I think it's really important to, not important, that's the wrong word. I think it's fascinating to find out the story behind each musician. And when you see where they grew up and what they did, some people were poor and they were farmers or whatever, but they were very in the countryside all the time. So they were always listening to birdsong. And a lot of Danish music I found out from Jens Ulfsson is all based on birdsong, because people were outside all the time. And while the polska might not sound like a snipe, there's something in it, or their response to that being like that. So from my point of view, I was brought up listening to Stevie Wonder and pop music, and my brother's love of Led Zeppelin and all of those people, and my mother's love of Oscar Peterson, and my dad loved swing jazz and Tommy Dorsey orchestras, and then Irish music. But if you look at what the background is, it's really fascinating that it's your parents and your aunts and your uncles and whatever they were listening to, the popular music of the time. And that might well have been folk music, but it won't be just folk music. It'll be other music as well. So I think that's what that's about, really. That's what colours your life and what you go back to. It's memories. It's what makes you happy. And I think people who seem to be musically gifted, like you said, I think they stick with the happy factor. They stick with the music that makes them happy. Tim Eadie is not going to play something that's not making him happy. He's a very intuitive musician. He doesn't, I don't think he thinks much about it, although he has really studied people like Steve Cooney and lots of other guitarists. So he has all those skills, but the skills are there for him to play. He's still a kid. I'm still a kid. There's parts of us that just want to go and jump in a puddle. That's the playfulness about it. Yeah. But there's another side that I've realised in later years, and it's all to do with losing a lot of friends. There's been a lot of bereavements and deaths in my friends and family, and that makes you think about life differently and maybe in a more soulful way, and that there's another way of... And, Karina Normanson used to say to me, that the sadness that you get in Irish music because of all the emigration and also heartbreak of lots of historical reasons. In Sweden, it's different. she says their longing is as much about I love that person or I love that country. And to show that you are sad that they're not there is also a very positive, happy thing. I hadn't thought about it in that way before. That's very soulful.
Yeah.
Very soulful.
Definitely.
A way to show somebody that you really love that home or that place or that dog is that you're sad that you're not there. That's a beautiful, beautiful metaphor, isn't it?
Yeah.
So that soulful thing. And, I love soul singers. I heard a lot of all the Tamla. I was really into Tamla Motown and Aretha Franklin and blah, 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 blah. And Bill Withers, huge Bill Withers fan. And that's all based on gospel music. And gospel music is based on church music. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
That it's another spiritual side. These are ordinary people who have a great belief in God, and that's their spirituality, but it comes out in music. So it doesn't matter to them if you believe in God or not. They're just trying to put that over to you, we can all take that. We all know what it's like to feel happy, sad, joyful, angry, whatever. And the more, and I think it's, for me, it's about the reason I play an accordion is because you can hide behind it, right?
Right.
So for me, there's a barrier. Definitely. It's something you hug, it's something that's really close to you, but it's also a little barrier. So I don't have a problem being sensual with music because I can hide behind this. It's the accordion, really. I kid myself, it's the accordion being like that. And there's lots of people, I think, who are afraid of being that open about sensuality. And yet music is sensual.
Oh, totally, yeah.
But
really
people get worried about, what does somebody think of me, or I can't do this. I got into tango music and you can't play tango politely. It doesn't work. But, the Argentinians, they don't have any problem with being passionate. I mean, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And it's beautiful to see somebody, I feel, that open to being loving and open about there is passion in anger, there is passion in love and tenderness. There's great passion in tenderness. But why does passion always equate with something dramatic? Passion can be very tiny. And a mother's love can be as passionate as anything. As we know, in the wild, a mother will fight for her child to the death.
Yeah.
And so would humans, really. So and in musical terms, why would that be any different?
Yeah.
Why would that be? It's just more subtle.
And I think we've come to the place where I'd like to ask you the last question for this podcast, which is something different, actually. Now, a lot of both young and older people struggle with nerves or performance anxiety, when they play concerts. And it's something that I've been struggling a lot with as well. For me, it's become better over the last few years. I've just played so many concerts. I've done that for many years, but especially for the last few years, maybe I've just played more and more. And that has kind of given me something I don't really know what it is, but it's just become a little bit better, maybe just because of, played so many concerts. But I think it's important that professional musicians like you and me are open about this, because there are so many people who struggle with it, and I know that you've struggled with it as well, because you told me about it. I think it's important that younger musicians can see that even professional musicians can struggle with this as well. Well, what's your story with performance anxiety, and also, do you have any good advice for maybe some of the younger people who want to be a professional musician, but maybe they're afraid if they can handle their nerves and all that?
Yeah, I struggled with it for a good 35 years, maybe 35 years. I could make an accordion. If you make a mistake, it's loud. It's really loud, And we're not talking slips here. We're talking big mistakes, forgetting where you are in the music, or that, because that fear grips you. It's not. I don't know what it is. It's not just fear. It's all sorts of things, but it grips you, and you feel physically sick. I know musicians who throw up before they go on stage. So why do we do it? Why do we still go on stage? Because we want to share that joy. So I got thinking about this a lot. And some people say, you need a little bit of nerves. You need a little bit to keep you high. No, I don't. If I have a little bit of nerves, I'm going to crash on stage, and I have done it a lot in my life, and I'm sure a lot of people have seen me do it. But and the worst thing is then you give yourself a terrible time for it when you shouldn't, because who cares, really? And it doesn't matter that the audience want you to do well or anything. I think for me, partly it goes back to competitions. that it was so stressful. I hated competitions, but it was the only way to get to the floor, and you know, and your parents want you to do them well, and la la la. I would quite happily have never played a competition in my life. I was embarrassed about winning because some of my friends didn't win, and I felt that was wrong. That why was it me? That because you don't want to stand out as a teenager. I think most teenagers just want to blend. We want to be sheep, you know. We don't want to stand out. And yet you see later on that it is the David Bowies and the Bjorks and that stand out who are great. So the anxiety thing, I got very interested in the neurological side of it. So I think this is the right way around. Sorry, I'm not a doctor or a scientist, but one side of your brain, I think it's the left side of your brain, is the rational side. So that takes care of all of the theoretical, I should do this, I should do that. We can rehearse forever, right? And then this side is the creative side, and that is the non-rational. And if that takes over, it doesn't matter how much you've done, it's not going to work. Because this side's saying, you can't do it, you're rubbish, it's, you know, all that stuff. And actually, I thought, oh right, so now I have to really relax the right side of the brain and have fun. And that helped, right? And that helped, but not always. And then I read about, it's actually the jump between the two, the synapse. So it's how this brain jumps to that brain and that brain jumps to that brain. Because when that brain, the creative side jumps, or the irrational side jumps to the rational side, it completely covers it and takes it over and destroys any amount of rehearsal or whatever. So it's how you get that leap. And what you have to do is you have to keep going through both. Okay, so I have to express what I'm fearing in a creative way. That doesn't mean sharing it with the audience, but doing it in different ways. So, for example, if I'm playing in a concert, and it's about getting to know yourself. So I know that I can talk and talk, as you've heard, forever, but I find it very hard to go on stage and talk and then play. It's two very different things for me. And the talking completely take me off track on what I'm playing. Okay. So I almost never start a concert without just playing first. And if I'm still not feeling a bit better, I'll play two things. And I never start with something I'm feeling worried about. I play something so easy. And, you know, that can be reels that I've played since I was 12, but I can play them in my sleep. So it looks quite, you know, it's fun for the audience, but I never take a risk on the first two numbers. I mean, never. And I used to do that, and of course it went wrong.
Well, I would say, I guess I'm a little bit the same, that I really like to start out with something that I just really know well. So because of the nerves again, it just feels better just to start with something that you know you can get through without any problems at all, and maybe it's not too difficult either and stuff like that. Yeah, that's definitely a thing for me as well.
And there's a pressure in performance to be funny, to be witty, to be all these things, and not all of us are, you know. So I would say, don't try and be what you're not, okay? But also, you don't even have to say anything. Audiences don't really want to have the whole history of each tune or the whole name of each tune. So play a couple of numbers one after the other. And I always throw in something a bit odd, like a story, like a long story, or a jazz song or something. And I can't sing, but I'll do it anyway because it makes me laugh at myself as well. Yeah. And people see you're human. And I've just come to the terms that if I make a mistake, they know it's not a recording.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's what you've got to think of, really.
And it's also interesting now, the stuff you're saying, because I love talking in between the different tunes, and I'm even trying to make it a thing for me. I wouldn't say I'm not a comedian at all, but I try to be funny, and people at least tell me that I've become quite good at it. So for me, that's actually kind of relaxing in some way. And then I know other people like what you're telling that are not too crazy about speaking in between the different tunes. So it's really, yeah, it comes down to who you are and what you like and what you don't like. So it's just to say, some people don't like to talk in between, and for some people like myself, it actually calms down my nerves a little bit. And
practice, you know, you everything takes practice, like I just said, it takes practice, right? So I always tell my students, if they want to, and they at some point they will be asked to do somebody's birthday party, a wedding, something, you know. So how do you practice that? Well, first of all, you rehearse in what you're going to wear. You rehearse on the seat you're going to be playing in, and invite friends round. Or if that's too terrifying, go and play at old people's homes. Go and play in hospitals. Those days are very long for them, but they're great because they they're not going to like you just because you play folk music. If they don't like you, they'll show they don't like you. Go to do an assembly at a children's school. It's terrifying, but once you've done it 3 times, it's kind of fun because kids ask really funny questions.
Yeah, and
and questions you would never expect. And it kind of starts to help you down, because if you go and do something, anybody who does something for the first time or second or third that they can't practice, it's really hard to do it well.
Yeah.
I joined the Catherine Tickell band. Catherine was brilliant at it, and so was Ian. But they've been doing it for 10 years already. This was my first thing. Catherine couldn't believe I couldn't speak on stage. I'd rather die.
Yeah.
I could play but not speak. And she's going, Karen, you have to speak. I'm like, it's too terrifying. I can't tell you why it's terrifying. Because there's no rationality about it. That brain, So practice it by doing it in front of safe audiences. Go into homes with dementia. They would love it.
And I think practice in general is essential, because one of the things that I found out over the years is that the more prepared I am with the music I'm playing, the better I feel.
Absolutely.
I really don't like going on stage if I haven't practiced that much on particular pieces, or if I don't know what I'm playing and stuff like that. Some people love that. I just don't like it. So that's maybe just an advice that I can give, that if somebody out there is a bit like me, then for me it works to be well rehearsed. That makes me feel more comfortable.
And I don't like practicing. I really don't like practicing.
Okay.
I love rehearsing with others.
Yeah.
But personal practice, I'd rather eat my socks.
Okay.
But if I even practice an hour a day up to a gig 3 weeks' time, I could do the gig without practicing, right? Because I would stick to stuff I know, and the audience would kind of be fine about it. But I know I'm kidding myself.
Yeah.
So if I practice, what the practice does, I've been playing 51 years, right? So if I practice, what it does for me, it makes me realise I really can do it. There's no risk. So then you can take a risk because you've already got your scaffold, yeah? And you might not. You might just play it, the waltz as you play it, or you might deviate a bit. But you can do that because you've got that scaffold there that is so solid, because you've done that practice every day. So it gives me self-confidence. It makes me go, I can do this.
Yeah, exactly.
Because even after 51 years, you can really get bad stage fright. But I know if I play badly, it's because I haven't had enough sleep, because I'm older, I need more rest, and I haven't done the practice. And it's like, sort it out.
Yeah. Very good advice. And on that note,
Thanks
a lot for visiting the podcast.
And I recommend you listen to Rune. He's not only a great accordion player, he's a great composer, and I love his tunes and teach them all the time.
Thanks a lot, Karen. And I also really recommend listening to you. You're an absolutely amazing player, and you've been such a big inspiration for me. So go and listen to Karen if you haven't heard her already. So thanks a lot for visiting today. It's been a really interesting conversation.
Great. Look forward to the next podcast.
Yes.
Okay.